Namaste, my beautiful queens, kings, if any. I cannot leave this alone. I must share it with you. I absolutely must. Because the how humongous and grandiose and severe this problem is, how severely it influences life of tens of millions, men and women, especially women, all over the world, no matter what country, language, skin color, so on. I will not talk no more. I want to read you this, and many of you will recognize yourself. And please take a little pen and a little paper, because I will have there like a self-test which you have to, we need you will have to answer those questions, or just listen to this video several times, and I will tell you where I am reading it from. You must read it, because you realizing it and understanding it, everything can change. I must share it with you. Gordon, age 38, a successful orthopedic surgeon, came to see me when his wife of 6 years left him. He was desperate to get her back, but she told him she wouldn't even consider coming home until he sought help for his uncontrollable temper. She was frightened by his sudden outbursts and worn down by his relentless criticism. Gordon knew he had a hot temper and that he could be a nag, but still he was shocked when his wife walked out. I asked Gordon to tell me about himself and guided him with a few questions as he talked. When I asked him about his parents, he smiled and painted a glowing picture, especially of his father, a distinguished Midwestern cardiologist. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have become a doctor. He's the best, absolutely best. His patients all think he is a saint. I asked him what his relationship with his father was like now. He laughed nervously and said, it was great, really great, until I told him I was thinking about going into holistic medicine. You'd think I wanted to be a mass murderer. I told him about 3 months ago, and now every time we talk, he starts ranting about how he didn't send me to medical school to become a faith healer. It really got bad yesterday. He got upset and told me I should forget I was ever a part of his family. That really hurt. I don't know, maybe holistic medicine isn't such a good idea. While Gordon was describing his father, who was obviously not as wonderful as Gordon would have liked me to believe, I noticed that he began to clasp and unclasp his hands in a very agitated way. When he caught himself doing this, he restrained himself by placing his fingertips together in the way that professors often do at their desk. It seemed a gesture he might have picked up from his father. I asked Gordon whether his father had always been so tyrannical. No, not really. I mean, he yelled and he screamed a lot, and I got spanked once in a while, like any other kid, but I wouldn't call him a tyrant. Something about the way he said the word spanked, some subtle emotional change in his voice struck me. I asked him about it. It turned out that his father had spanked him 2 or 3 times a week with a belt. It hadn't taken much for Gordon to incur a beating. A defiant word, a below-par report card, or a forgotten chore were all sufficiently venial crimes. Nor was Gordon's father particular about where he beat his child. Gordon recalled being beaten on his back, his legs, his arms, his hand, and his buttocks. I asked Gordon how badly his father had physically hurt him. Gordon, I didn't bleed or anything. I turned out okay. He just needed to keep me in line. Susan, but you were scared of him, weren't you? Gordon, I was scared to death. But isn't that the way it's supposed to be with parents? Susan, Gordon, is that how you would want your children to feel about you? Gordon avoided my eyes. This was making him extremely uncomfortable. I pulled my chair closer and continued gently. Your wife is a pediatrician. If she saw a child in her office with the same marks on his body that you had on yours from one of your father's spankings, would she be required by law to report it to the authorities? Gordon didn't have to answer. His eyes filled with tears at the realization. He whispered, I am getting a terrible knot in my stomach. I'm trying not to cry because this is very familiar to me. That's how I spent my childhood and youth, beaten up. Gordon's defenses were down. Thought he was in terrible emotional pain. He had uncovered for the first time the primary, long hidden source of his temper. He had been containing a volcano of anger against his father since childhood, and whenever the pressure got too great, he would erupt at whoever was handy, usually his wife. I knew that we had to do. Acknowledge and heal the battered little boy inside of him. Acknowledge and heal the battered little boy inside of him. When I got home that evening, I found myself still thinking about Gordon. I kept seeing his eyes fill with tears as he realized how he had been mistreated. I thought about the thousands of adult men and women with whom I had worked, whose daily lives were being influenced, even controlled, by patterns set during childhood by emotionally destructive parents. I realized there must be millions more who had no idea why their lives weren't working. I realized there must be millions more who had no idea why their lives were not working, yet who could be helped. That's when I decided to write this book. Why look back? Gordon's story is not unusual. I've seen thousands of patients in my 18 years as a therapist, both in private practice and in hospital group, and a solid majority have suffered. Now please hear. Have suffered a damaged sense of self-worth because of parent had regularly hit them or criticized them, or joked about how stupid or ugly or unwanted they were, or overwhelmed them with guilt, or sexually abused them, or forced too much responsibility on them, or desperately overprotected them. Like Gordon, few of these people made the connection between their parents and their problems. This is a common emotional blind spot. Emotional blind spot. People simply have trouble seeing that their relationships with their parents has a major impact on their lives. I am a great believer in short-term therapy that focus on changing destructive behavior patterns. But my experience has taught me that it is not enough to treat the symptoms. You must also deal with the source of those symptoms. Therapy is most effective when it proceeds down a double track, both changing current self-defeating behavior and disconnected from the traumas of the past. Gordon had to learn techniques to control his anger, but in order to make permanent changes, ones that would stand up under stress, he also had to go back and deal with the pain of his childhood. He had to go back. This is how I escaped therapy dozens of times. As soon as I had to face that me little girl, severely terrified and abused, those of you who read my book know, I would escape. I wouldn't have the guts, the strength to face it. He also had to go back and deal with the pain of his childhood. Our parents plant mental and emotional seeds in us, seeds that grow as we do. In some families, there are seeds of love, respect, and independence. But in many others, there are seeds of fear, obligation, and guilt. Fear, obligation, and guilt. If you belong to the second group, this book is for you. As you grew into adulthood, these seeds grew into invisible weeds that invaded your life in ways you never dreamed of. Their tendrils may have harmed your relationship, your career, your family. They have certainly undermined your self-confidence and self-esteem. I am going to help you find those weeds and root them out. What is a toxic parent? I'm gonna miss some parts so I have time to tell you everything I wanted in this video. There are many parents whose negative patterns of behavior are consistent and dominant in a child's life. These are the parents who do the harm. As I searched for a phrase to describe the common ground that these harmful parents share, the word that kept running through my mind was toxic, like a chemical toxin. The emotional damage inflicted by these parents spreads throughout a child's being. And as the child grows, so does the pain. Please understand, many of you think that you outgrow it. You grow, you're 30, you're 40, you're 50, you are 79. This pain only increases. What better word than toxic to describe parents who inflict ongoing trauma, abuse, and denigration on their children, and in most cases continue to do so even after their children are grown. What do toxic parents do to you? Please hear and please make notes or listen to this video several times. Please warn others. Please warn others. A lot of people live horrific life, choose horrific men to be with, make constant wrong choices, abuse substances, and they don't know the roots of it. They don't know why they do it. This is why they do it. What do toxic excuse me. What do toxic parents do to you? Whether adult children of toxic parents were beaten when little or left alone too much, sexually abused or treated like fools, or overburdened by guilt. I see this like every day. Overburdened by guilt. They almost all suffer surprisingly similar symptoms. Please listen to this. Damaged self-esteem. Check. Leading to self-destructive behavior. Check. In one way or another, they almost all feel worthless. Check. Unlovable. Check. And inadequate. How many of you heard this? You are crazy. You're insane. You don't have a brain. You don't understand what you're doing. You're abnormal. Other kids are normal and you're not. These feelings stem to a great degree. I will repeat it. What do toxic parents do to you? Symptoms: damaged self-esteem, leading to self-destructive behavior. In one way or another, they almost all feel worthless, unlovable, and inadequate. These feelings stem to a great degree from the fact that children of toxic parents blame themselves for their parents' abuse. Check. Sometimes consciously, sometimes not. It is easier for a defenseless, dependent child to feel guilty for having done something bad, to deserve daddy's rage, than it is for that child to accept the frightening fact that daddy, the protector, can be trusted. Now please hear this very, 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 very clearly. When these children become adults, they continue to bear these burdens of guilt and inadequacy, making it extremely difficult for them to develop a positive self-image. Check, check, check. I will repeat. When these children become adult, they continue to bear these burdens of guilt and inadequacy, making it extremely difficult for them to develop a positive self-image. The resulting lack of confidence check and self-worth check can in turn color every aspect of your life. It is always difficult to tell ourselves the truth about how much our parents may have hurt us. Although it might be painful, an emotional reaction is perfectly healthy. For the sake of simplicity, please take or just put check marks to each question I'm going to read you, or write them down. For the sake of simplicity, these questions refer to parents in the plural, even though your answer may apply to only one parent. Questionnaire number 1, your relationship with your parents when you were a child. Just put marks if it's a yes. Did your parents tell you you were bad or worthless? Did they call you insulting names? Did they constantly criticize you? Answer. Question number 2. Did your parents use physical pain to discipline you? Did they beat you with belts, brushes, or other objects? Answer your question. Number 3. Did your parents get drunk or use drugs? Did you feel confused, uncomfortable, frightened, hurt, or ashamed by this? Put your question mark, yes or no. Number 4. Were your parents severely depressed or unavailable because of emotional difficulties or mental or physical illness? Put your question, yes or no. 5. Did you have to take care of your parents because of their problems? Answer. 6. Did your parents do anything to you that had to be kept secret? Were you sexually molested in any way? Put your answer. 7. Were you frightened of your parents a great deal of the time? Put your answer. 8. Were you afraid to express anger at your parents? And next questionnaire, your adult life. 10 questions. Please answer 10 questions. First, do you find yourself in destructive or abusive relationship? Question 2. Do you believe that if you get too close to someone, they will hurt and or abandon you? Answer this question, yes or no. Number 3, do you expect the worst from people, from life in general? Answer the question. Number 4, do you have a hard time knowing who you are, what you feel, and what you want? Number 5, are you afraid that if people knew the real you, they wouldn't like you? Answer. Number 6, do you feel anxious when you are successful and frightened that someone will find out you're a fraud? 7, do you get angry or sad for no apparent reason? 8, are you a perfectionist? 9, is it difficult for you to relax or have a good time? And 10, despite your best intentions, do you find yourself behaving just like your parents? There's 10 questions you need to answer. And part 3 of the questionnaire, your relationships with your parents as an adult. Please answer this question. Number 1, do your parents still treat you as if you were a child? Number 2, are many of your major life decisions based upon whether your parents would approve? Number 3, do you have intense emotional or physical reactions after you spend or anticipate spending time with your parents? Number 4, are you afraid to disagree with your parents? Number 5, do your parents manipulate you with threats or guilt? I need to write the word guilt on on the wall, because this is like, it's my second name. My name should be not Lala Agni, but Lala Guilt. Do your parents manipulate you with threats or guilt? Number 6, do your parents manipulate you with money? They demand money from you, or they tell you they won't give you no money, or they will exclude you from the heritage, something like this. Do your parents manipulate you with money? 7, Do you feel responsible for how your parents feel? If they are unhappy, do you feel it's your fault? Check, check, check. I have to put 3 marks here. Is it your job to make it better for them? Of course it is. Number 8. Do you believe that no matter what you do, it's never good enough for your parents? Oh boy. Again, number 8, do you believe that no matter what you do, it's never good enough for your parents? Number 9, do you believe that someday, somehow, your parents are going to change for the better? Unfortunately, this is women who believe in that. They also find themselves a partner, a toxic partner, just to mirror their parents. And they also believe for 30 years to come that he's going to change. Now, the conclusion. If you answered yes to even 1/3 of these questions, there is a great deal in this book, that can help you. Even though some of the chapters may not seem relevant to your situations, it is important to remember. Please hear these words. All toxic parents, regardless of the nature of their abuse, leave the same scars. I will repeat it again. All toxic parents, regardless of the nature of their abuse, leave the same scars. For example, your parents may not have been alcoholic, but the chaos, instability, and loss of childhood that typically alcoholic homes are just as real for children of other types of toxic parents. The principles and techniques of recovery are similar for all adult children as well, so I urge you not to miss any of the chapter. If you are an adult child of toxic parents, there are many things you can do to free yourself from their distorted legacy of guilt and self-doubt. I'll be discussing these various strategies throughout this book, and I want you to proceed with a great deal of hope. And you can read the rest there. I showed this book to you yesterday. Susan Forward, Toxic Parents Overcoming the Hurtful Legacy and Reclaiming Your Life. The most difficult thing, in my opinion, to believe is that none of this was your fault. I don't remember the name of this movie. Maybe you can write it in in a comment section. It was Matt Damon and Robin Williams, and Matt Damon was a severely abused child, and I don't remember even the whole movie, what it was about, but I think Robin Williams was a psychotherapist, and he was holding him by shoulders saying, "It was not your fault," and Matt Damon tried to run away, tried to push Robin Williams and run away. He didn't want to deal with it. He didn't want to deal with this trauma it caused. But Robin Williams, he kept holding him really tightly, saying, "It was not your fault. It was not your fault. It was not your fault." And Matt Damon just started to cry, and he just cried like a baby on the shoulders of Robin Williams. None of this was your fault. None of this was your fault. And another very sad problem is if you try to explain your parents any of this damage they had done, I don't think even 1% of them are going to admit, "I was wrong." I want to hope that 1% of them can admit, "I was wrong, I shouldn't have done it." But the problem is, I don't think so. I haven't seen that happening. They're not going to admit, and you will not be able to explain this to them, and what this treatment of you in your childhood by them or youth, or even now as adult, you keep on being blamed and guilt trapped. Unfortunately, they're not gonna admit it. They're not gonna take on the responsibility. They might tell you, you know, it was your fault, or like, don't try. Don't try to explain them anything. They're not gonna get it. They're not gonna admit it. They're not gonna take responsibility for their actions. They're not going to. They might tell you just read some stupid books, and maybe you went to a psychologist, some stupid psychologist who told you your father meant wrong for you or your mother meant wrong for you. Please don't try. Instead, please concentrate on yourself. And as I said in my past video I've done yesterday, I don't tell you toxic parents are still toxic people in your life. They still really badly damaging your life. I don't tell you leave them on the street to die. Make sure they are taken care of. Make sure they have what they need, place to live, care, medical care, company, something, entertainment, whatever. But if they're still keep on being toxic, you need to heal. You shouldn't be pressed the same wounds which are not healed over and over and over again. This book, girls, is a couple of dollars. I think I got it like used for like $5 or something like this. Please get it. And please understand that this influences your relationship, your career, your self-destructive behavior, because self-destructive not only can be alcohol or drugs, but it's also you getting yourself wrong man and getting in this relationship, toxic relationship. Instead of your parents, you get yourself a toxic man. Please heal, and please treasure yourself, and remember, none of this was your fault. You're beautiful. You are here to shine. Heal and shine. Namaste.